Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Leading Change. My name is Emma, and I've got Josh with me today. And we're going to be talking about something that's probably very close to home for both of us. And that's the idea of coming into the insurance industry as a bit of an outsider. But before we get to all the questions that I've got for you, Josh, can you give everybody a real quick introduction?
Yeah, for sure. So I am Josh Levine. I'm the founder and CEO at Cake and Arrow. So just super quickly, Cake and Arrow is an experience design and product innovation firm, and we focus exclusively on the insurance industry. So we'll partner with carriers, distributors, and service providers to uncover new business opportunities through behavioral research. And then from there, we will design, launch, and optimize digital experiences that address real problems that matter. So work can range from improving policyholder experiences to designing agent or employee portals, to infusing human-centered mindsets in organizations. But ultimately, the mission is to move the industry forward by improving the way insurance is sold, bought, and serviced. As for me, I am definitely not the prototype for someone who chooses to work in the insurance industry. I'm a designer by trade. I am an art school graduate, so in the left brain, right brain spectrum, I sit very squarely on the right side. I'm definitely driven more by emotion and creativity than say logic and the linearity. And personally, I'm just obsessed with how a human-centered kind of design approach and a mindset, which inherently doesn't come natural to the industry, can help solve complex challenges. And my personal passion lies in understanding how business and technology kind of converge with humanity. So I enjoy chatting with you.
Well, thank you for joining me for the conversation. And I teased this in the intro there, Josh, but you come from the design background. I come from the teaching world and then into technology, then into insurance. So we both kind of have this viewpoint of being an outsider, and also on the vendor side, knowing that one of the first questions that's like asked is, how much insurance experience do you have? How long have you been in the industry? So like, how do you walk that line of proving expertise while also at the same time, like remaining kind of like with that different and unique thought process?
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's two sides of that line, right? And it's important to understand both sides. It's actually, like, I would even say it's more of a circle, right? With this really bold line that separates the inside of the circle from the outside, with the inside naturally being the business of insurance, the outside being that of like the non-insurance world. That's customers, future hires, even many insurtechs, right? And the inside of the circle, right? Like just this business, it's so complex and such a nuanced business. And it's really, you and I have discussed this, anchored by this like close-knit community with such a rich history and, long-standing processes and systems, and it's driven by people with such incredibly deep expertise that has been built up over so many years. And I don't know about you, but like entering that circle, right, is almost like entering a new country with its own language, with its own cultural norms. And as an outsider, at least it was for me when I first started with the industry 10, 12 years ago, that can be very intimidating. Again, I felt that way. And an outsider cannot, I learned quickly, an outsider can't just cross that line and get it. You have to respect and understand the intricacies and the regulations that run the industry. So I think it's so critical that you recognize and embrace that complexity and really acknowledge the expertise of those who've been in the field from years and learn from them. At the same time, the outside perspective and that fresh take on the world of insurance is just so powerful and crucial, right? Because you're more in touch with the outside world, right? It's easier to experience how people feel and experience products, and you're able to view challenges through, an entirely different lens. And it's much more natural to question things. And you'd appreciate this. It's like, there's that concept of a beginner's mindset. You think about like our kids and the way they're almost annoyingly question everything, right? And with such purity and curiosity, and they come up with all these great ideas without worrying about what the person on the other side thinks, right? Whether it's right or wrong. And they understand, that it's like that unadulterated view of the world. It is so healthy. But then as they grow up, right, that curiosity begins to subside and the realities of the world come into play. But it's so important to retain that view, and it's just also so hard. So you can't let that kind of as is approach scare you or hold you back. You really do have to stay focused on people, their needs, and their problems, their realities, and then really just trust that you can find a technical or an operational way to serve them that works for the business rather than the other round. It really is like this constant dance between learning from within the circle to innovating and adapting from without, from the outside.
So one, I'm like on my tail end of making the way out of like the annoying question stage. My youngest just turned 5, and I feel like I've seen online that question the why peaks at 4. And specifically with 4-year-old girls, I think it's like 400 something questions a day. But I do appreciate their viewpoint on the world. And again, I have asked myself many times, how and why do we get so far away from asking questions all the time? And I know, like, from my own personal experience, I think I may have stayed in that question asking far beyond what's normal based off of what I do for a living. But also, like, I remember in 8th grade having a teacher tell me I ask a lot of dumb questions, which, like, now having been a teacher and being an adult is like, that is the worst possible thing you could have ever said to me. And I'm so glad I didn't listen.
You should, that's not good.
Okay.
And that, to me, it's a leadership move, right? Like, that's the role of a leader, is to make it safe to ask those kinds of questions. And it's something the industry definitely needs more of. But
and think differently. So what starts to happen if maybe we don't retain that sense of kind of like outsiderness, and we start to fall into being very policy or process oriented and kind of like falling too far into the norms of the industry?
Yeah, I mean, you see it, right? Like, think about it, we're, especially people that have been in the industry for so long, right? We're all creatures of habit. That's just human nature. And for those that have been inside the industry for tens of, their entire careers, you build up all these biases, right? And it becomes really hard to embrace new perspectives or new ways of working when you've been doing things a certain way for so many years, and with great success too, right? That whole policy-centric approach has worked. But the reality is the world we live in, it is different, right? The customers today see and they experience insurance differently than buyers of the past. So now more than ever, it's just so critical we understand them and like really deeply understand what motivates them and understand how insurance fits into their lives, rather than, which is a big issue, rather than how we as an industry thinks insurance should fit in their lives. And the reality is, to answer your question, the deeper you get into the business, the more removed you are from the end users, right? The outside of that circle. And that makes it really hard to empathize, especially, it's like when all the focus is on execution and metrics, like turnaround time or quality rates, SLAs, like just when you become so entrenched in the business, to your point earlier, you fail to question constraints. You really get complacent, assuming that things cannot, or even worse, will not change. And I see it all too often from where I'm sitting of as you get entrenched, how you begin to unintentionally neglect, right, the customer. And it's not a bad way. It's just like, that's what happens when you get so deep, when you lose connection, and it becomes this, you hear it, all the talks, all the articles of like, being efficient and effective at the business side of insurance. But the truth is that is not mutually exclusive from being good at being customer centric. And I believe so strongly in that. And I see it, and it's this concept of when, again, back to the point of being in the business for so long, you become such experts, like I said earlier, like deep experts in their business means you begin to think the solution is so obvious, right? Like you hear it with technology, you hear it just in general. There's managers, leaders, anyone, they come up with solutions that feel so right at the time, but then you hear stories over and over of that thing makes it to market after a couple of years, and it's simply people didn't adopt it, it didn't work. That's because the almost the curse of expertise sometimes, of questioning your assumptions and validating and talk to people, seeing if there's a real problem. That is hard to do when you are so entrenched in the business. It's really hard to do. And I have a lot of empathy, and let's kind of make a living off doing that, of anyone who says, all right, let's just flip it and be customer centric, or let's just kind of embrace what the outside world thinks. And that is hard. That is a tall ask, which is it's doable. And so there's a lot that goes into it.
So then, like, on the flip side, help me understand the value that like your team can bring to these types of processes where you are trying to flip the script and you are trying to become customer centric and think through this differently with that design background that you guys have. What does that look like?
Yeah. So, the value of, we like to say, almost towing the line, right? Or that thick line of the circle. You want to avoid going too far in, right? Like, we have to be experts in the business. Like I said, you can't make it without understanding the nuances. But at the same time, the value of staying on the outside is that you have those fresh eyes, right? You're in touch with what the rest of the world is saying and feeling. And there's a level of optimism you can have, right? This designer mindset. When you have these external experiences or perspectives to draw from, right? So like, we don't have this perception of like these sacred ideas that can't be touched, and we're kind of free to treat challenges as human problems that can be solved with human solutions, not these problems that people feel are so unique to the industry. The benefit of where we sit, because we get to do a lot of research, like we're on the front lines. Obviously, we're talking to the internal business, but man, like, it's probably one of my favorite parts of the job is watching my team or hearing some of the insights of talking to people on the front lines and like hearing the challenge they face, and the good and the bad. It's the good also. Hearing like the value they see in the insurance companies, how they're being treated, the stories you hear. That's the beauty of being in touch with the outside. And we get to kind of sit on that line of deliver those insights or help businesses kind of design around it. It's amazing, and that's back to the point earlier of like businesses losing touch and forgetting about, like, if there's one thing about this industry, like, that we're all very passionate about making a difference, right? And being a bedrock of society and the impact and the importance it is. My wish for this industry is that they get to experience, all of them get to experience these insights of what people are saying out there, not just what's on the cover of Wall Street Journal, all these stories of the negativity. I mean, there's magical stuff happening out there, and it's a beautiful thing to toe that line and kind of merge the two worlds, because it's the opposite too, right? Like the outside, sure, on the inside of the circle, it's hard to grasp how people are feeling out there. It's the opposite of, and when we see this with hiring and all that the outside of that circle has some perceptions, right or wrong, about what happens on the inside. And they don't understand the nuance and the complexity, and they don't understand, again, to use the word that your kids or my kids probably know better. They're like, there's the view out there, like that, it's sus, right? Like sus, I think that's right. Right. And it's not, right? There's so much nuance, like that. No one's looking to, hurt anyone. It's just the way the business is structured, the way, there's a lot of things that compound and make prices go up. We've seen in our research constantly, again, on the outside, the recent climate research from a claims perspective is, people acknowledge that they get that prices are going up, just like their milk, and buying eggs and cars and all that stuff, that insurance is going up. The part that they can't grasp is some of the communications, right? Of like, they want to know, we talk more about claims, but like, give them the bad news or the good news. There's this feeling of them feeling like they have to initiate this claims process. And that's where there's this disconnect of the two worlds. And I love that. I love that part of being in the middle of that. Like, that is, it's like two sides of a mountain. There's two people on two different mountains, and they're screaming at each other, but they're not really like hearing each other. That's the benefit of sitting on the outside. Like we've gotten to, it's been a gift to immerse ourselves in the culture of insurance, right? And be a part of it, see how they make, how we make decisions and how problems are solved. But at the same time, be on the outside, right? And observe how customers, how agents, how employees see, feel, and experience. So yeah, it's that kind of dual role that's really equipped us with this unique insider outsider perspective. And I think you said design thinking. I mean, the essence of design thinking really is, the way I see it is, it's a way to adopt some of these mindsets. In a way, sometimes it's tricks, right? It's ways and elements, and it's a muscle you build to better remove what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and kind of feel what's happening on the outside, right? To really experience how others experience insurance. And it's so critical. And it's simply just not, it's still, in design thinking in other industries is passé. Like we shouldn't be talking about it as much, this concept of being customer focused. But like I said earlier, it's very hard to in this industry to feel and see what's going on outside that circle. It really is. But you see the impact and the benefits of doing it. People you talk to and that I talk to, it's when you can appreciate and see the impact you're having on the human beings you serve, you have even more pride in your job. Like, it's, again, like I said, it's my favorite part is kind of merging those two worlds. It's a lot of work
Bringing
to do,
it all together.
we're on our way.
Well, one, you get extra points for using the word sus in the interviews to tell your kids
Right?
that you're
Did I say it wrong?
And thank you so much for joining me, Josh. And for anybody
Anytime.
that's watching the interview, if you're not already, make sure that you give Josh a follow on LinkedIn as well as Cake and Arrow, and reach out to either one of us if you've got any questions. But I certainly appreciate you joining me, Josh, and for everybody watching, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Leading Change. If you liked what you saw, be sure to subscribe and come back weekly for more expert interviews on digital transformation, change management, and emerging technologies.